First Class Fatherhood. That is where Alec Lace comes in with his popular podcast.
And one of the most interesting was on a podcast.
Alec Lace interviews high-profile fathers from actors to NFL players with a vision to change the narrative of fatherhood and family life.
Joining me now, First Class Father, Joe Nichols. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you very much, man.
All right, honored to have you here. Let's start like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I have an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 24-year-old.
Very cool. If you could, Joe, please just take a second here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure. I'm a country music singer. I've been touring since 2002, where I had my first major label release. And I have 3 kids, born in 98, 2012, and 2014. I'm married. I married a woman named Heather in 2007. Beautiful wife. And we live together in East Texas and Tyler, Texas, with our 2 youngest kids.
Yeah, very cool. And obviously, you've had a very successful country music career. But if you could take me back, Joe, to take me back 24 years ago. How did the experience of becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Well, I became a different person feelings wise. You know, I was kind of a shallow person, then a little selfish, a lot selfish, young guy. I was 21 when my oldest was born, and, kind of thought about money and girls a lot. That's kind of what, motivated me with music and with having my first, well, by the way, all girls. I have all girls. And I think that was probably a divine plan. I think I started thinking about things a little differently. I started slowing my mind down as far as music goes. I just wanted to be kind of rowdy, kind of a Hank Jr., Merle Haggard, Waylon Jennings kind of style, lifestyle. And, the character that I played in country music was rowdy and, like to fight, like to drink, like to party and do all the things like that. And I think having my first child and 2 children since, I think has slowed down my thinking and made it a little deeper. I started thinking about, other ways to play music and other things that matter enough to write and sing about music. I think it just changed the way I thought and felt on a deeper level.
Yeah, very well said, John. I know I was talking to you a little bit before we started doing this about I'm a recovering alcoholic and an addict myself. And one of the things, too, Joe, and you mentioned, I know you like to throw it back and pay tribute to a lot of the original country music artists and stuff. I remember listening to stuff like and hearing like Mickey Gilley, the girls all get prettier at closing time and stuff like that. Yeah. Country music seems to be very embedded with the bar scene, the alcohol scene, many millions of songs about it. How did getting sober, going through the process of becoming sober kind of affect you as a musical artist and as a father?
Well, growing up and kind of my heroes in country music, the Merle Haggards, the George Strait, the Keith Whitleys, Randy Travis, Hank Jr. A lot of those guys, not all of them, but a lot of those guys had kind of this hardcore side to their edge to their music and their personalities. Especially a guy like Keith Whitley, who I idolized. And there was kind of this romance with being the hardest drinker that you knew, the guy that could outdrink everybody and could sing and play music, and the guy that people wanted to be. And also that tragic story, that Keith Whitley, dying so young of alcoholism, or alcohol poisoning. I think a lot of male singers, and I've heard them share the same kind of thoughts and feelings, like that's how you want to go, like be recognized as the greatest, and he died too soon. It sounds like such a sick idea, but that's kind of how a sick mind thinks. What a way to go would be to go out drinking at an early age and have people say, oh, what could have been. It's just a weird screw that's just kind of is a thing that's wired differently in my brain and a lot of our brains as alcoholics and addicts. And, when I got sober, it took several times. It took getting sober, falling off the wagon, getting sober, falling off the wagon, never really more than, a short period of time. And eventually I gave it to God. I stopped trying to get sober by myself or willpower, or I'm going to think my way through this, or I'm going to do this, and here's how I'll set things up in my life so I don't fall into that. None of that really mattered. I tried to do it my way over and over and over again. I mean, I don't know, countless times. Eventually I let man upstairs take control. And I mean, talk about a psychic shift. It was, and I can't really describe it in words. I've tried to a million times with my wife, but something happened differently in here that I can't explain nor take credit for. Something happened when I said, if you can take this, would you? And the obsession that has always lived there in my mind, just the need to think about things, about drinking or drugs or any kind of obsessive thinking, that was removed, from my brain. And now I do things to keep that removed from my brain, but that was gone from no doing of my own. So I say, to bring it back home to my family, if it wouldn't have been for my wife and my children, I would never got to that point of being done enough to ask for, some change.
Yeah, I definitely relate to everything that you're saying there. Once the desire is gone, that seems to be when it all changes around, and that's what happened with me.
Yeah.
I mean, my father died of cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism. I just lost one of my brothers this year from the same thing, so it's been a plague in our family for years, and something that honestly, I never thought I would even have a chance to beat. I kind of almost gave up trying to quit, so it's definitely, I know I get so many different listeners, so many dads that are out there to listen that are right in the fight right now, struggling with it, and they feel like it's a battle. And that's always great to hear different testimonies from guys that have come out on the other side, and just to see that there is a chance. Because, like, not even just in country music, Joe, but we glorify it so much in our society. Right. Like, it's everywhere that you look. Even if you're watching a football game, the sponsors are Bud Light, and it's like no athletic performance is going to come good from drinking Bud Lights. But it's like we see it everywhere plastered in front of us, and we make it seem like it's this good thing. And I think we got to change the mindset around that, just as a society.
Yeah, it's you're right, and it's almost marketed as if it's medicine. It's just such a weird culture. And on the other side of being sober now, I can see that. Boy, talk about tapping into a sickness in your mind like clockwork is just so effective in their marketing. Well, I would say to anybody that's watching this that's struggling, I always say this: if I can get sober, this guy right here who's tried everything and has been to the lowest of lows and just as hardcore as anybody, and I know everybody has that kind of similar story, but anybody, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And it doesn't matter how low you go. That's what they say. It doesn't matter how low you've gone. Doesn't matter. It's possible.
Yeah, I love that, Joe. Let me bring it back to you as a father here. What would you consider to be the top values that you hope to instill in your kids as they grow up?
I've discussed this with my older daughter, and I hope as my youngest to get older, I can kind of impress upon them don't get hard opinions too easily. Don't come to a conclusion like that based on, what you think is right, what you believe is correct. My experience has taught me, especially as a dad, be patient. Even if you think you're right, even if you convinced you're right, be patient with somebody else's thinking, because there's a chance they're just arguing to argue, and they might see it your way if you just maybe shut up and listen to them a little while and let them talk and figure it out. So I try to do that with my oldest. Definitely, we sometimes we butt heads on a lot of things, and I've learned that gets really nowhere. So I'll give advice. And I'll sit back and let her watch. Just take that advice or not take that advice, and be patient. Even if I think I'm right, be patient and let her maybe figure it out. She's a smart individual. And with my two youngest ones, the older I get, the more patient I get. I wish my 24-year-old had the dad that my 8 and 10-year-old have, because I was a very young guy then. And now as I get a little older, I see things a little slower motion. And I can stop and say, my thinking may not be correct here. Maybe it is, but take your time and let them make a mistake. They're kids. They're going to do and say things that are stupid, and they're going to do things and they don't even know why they do them, but be patient. And I hope that they marry men that are patient and loving and tender and kind, rather than, somebody they want to butt heads with.
Yeah, praying the same thing for my daughter. We have 3 boys, and our daughter is our only girl. She's 8 years old now, so praying for the same thing. But we're just like, our oldest two are teenagers, 16 and 15, and we're just going through it. We've never done it before too. So we're kind of trying to figure out the best ways to communicate, and we're learning on the job as always. Yeah. We don't even have a child yet that's driving a car, where this is the first time we're going to go through that whole process. So just trying to stay up to date as best as we can. And I guess it relates to this, what you were just saying, but what about the discipline portion? What type of disciplinarian are you as a dad? And is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
With discipline, I try not to let feelings dictate, the discipline stuff. Because I think what I've learned from my parents, what I've learned as a young parent, is my feelings can't dictate how she takes this. And what I mean is, I can't go into a rage and expect her to learn anything from my rage. When she messes up or does things that I've said no, and when I've set guidelines, she breaks those. I can't let my anger, my rage, my feelings dictate how she's going to learn from this. So, like I said, especially as I get older, my middle child and my youngest child kind of have more of an experience like this with their dad. When they mess up, I slow it down and I make sure that they understand what's happening. Because in my experience as a child, a lot of discipline was chaotic and kind of meaningless and aimless and directionless. And I didn't know what I did wrong. And I didn't know why I just got the discipline that I just got, whether it's whooping or whatever. I know. So it could be random. So the lesson was never learned. So with my kids, I try not to let my feelings race ahead of me. Try to slow it down, make sure I communicate with them now. Do you know what you did? And I want to hear you say what you did, and keep saying it to me until you understand what you did was wrong. Maybe you lied. Maybe you went outside the boundaries. Maybe you did something you knew or you weren't supposed to do with your, friends or iPad or something like that. You weren't supposed to do that. Do you know better? And then eventually slowing that down myself slows it down for them, and they're not scared, and they know that what they've done is wrong. And now they accept the discipline and the guidelines moving forward. It doesn't always mean that they're not going to mess up again, but at least my one goal, my one mission is to always make sure they understand why they're in trouble. Because I a lot of times didn't understand why I was in trouble. It was kind of a directionless discipline.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that one of the biggest fears like I have is that they won't come to me when serious things are going on if I'm wrong in my discipline. And sometimes too, like that's why it's good to balance it with my wife, because sometimes that I don't know, that reaction or that anger can you just get caught in it and you can't get out of it. And right. So at least one of us will recognize it. If I'm doing it or if she's doing it, we'll recognize it. We'll be able to play the other side of it and try to bring the conversation back into some kind of meaningful lesson, because sometimes once you get going, it's difficult to stop. But and I know you got the tour going on right now. How do you kind of balance the tour? What is that like? Do you bring the family with you to certain places? How do you balance the family life and the tour life?
Well, when the girls are out of school, they'll come out on the road with me. We'll have some family time. We've done that where they've been out with me 10, 15 days at a time, out there on the road. And it can tire them out pretty easily. I think it's good to have them experience the road like Dad does. And when Dad gets home from a weekend or from a week, they understand why Dad kind of looks a little tired. It kind of takes 24 hours to kind of, settle in and get a little rest. And I think when they come out on the road with me, they get a little taste of that. And they're like, boy, we understand why it's kind of a tiring process. But I do that as much as possible. And this, I'll have weekends. I've planned out weekends, that my 10-year-old can come out and be with Dad for 24, 48 hours on the road, just me and her. So she feels like she gets some one-on-one time that we would normally have at home. And same thing for my 8-year-old. And my 24-year-old comes, to shows when I'm her neck of the woods up in Washington State. And so there's definitely a lot, 3/4 of my time is spent on the road, and a very small percentage of the time of that time is spent with them on the road. So I've got to find ways and places and times that I can, be with them as much as possible, even if it's on FaceTime all day.
Well, that's definitely one of the benefits today that we didn't have years ago, that you can always do that. Yeah, that's definitely. And I seen on the tour schedule, you got Country for Kids. What's that all about? Is that what's the setup look like there?
Well, guys, I'm not sure which particular date you're talking about. There's a lot of, especially we get later in the year, November, December. There's a lot of Christmas programs that we're a part of. A lot of jams, 10-man jam type things, acoustic jams, and most, if not all, those benefit kids, Kids Hospital, Children's Hospital, St. Jude, a lot of local Toys for Tots, things like that. A lot of our November, December is spent doing charities for kids. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Props to you for that. And speaking about the holidays, I know, they're coming up as quick as possible here. Do you guys have any kind of holiday traditions or something you guys started or anything you're carrying over? What does that look like?
We do a few things that we have to do every year. I'm a bit of a Clark Griswold Christmas light kind of guy. I have big plans, big ideas, and they all kind of fail miserably a few times before I get it kind of looking halfway right at the house. My wife gets a kick out of that every year. I do something big and I'm like, well, it looks a little too much. So that's kind of my tradition. We do, there's a train locally that they turned into the Polar Express. We do that every year. We do, several family things that we go spend a lot of time, just us as a family. Take a trip sometimes, for Christmas time.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we got one of those Polar Express type of deals over here, and I love that. I'm a railroad guy myself. I've been working for the railroad for 23 years, so that's my main gig, and so it's a pretty cool experience to share that with the kids on the holiday time. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And I'm kind of curious, Joe. I know that the scene has changed as far as the way people are breaking into the music scene today. I know the way that we consume media, the way that we listen to music has drastically changed from when you first came onto the scene here. So what kind of advice do you have for parents out there that have kids that are trying to get into the music industry? Is it social media? Is it going the traditional route? What would be your advice to the parents to tell the kids?
Boy, I can only tell you what I tell my kids, and that is finish your education first. There's one thing I regret most in my life is not finishing my education, taking it as far as I could take it, because I find myself in rooms with people that are highly educated, that are more educated than me, and I have to really overcompensate for doing that. I have to know a lot more about what I'm doing than they already know. So I always tell them, if you want help from me in music, I will gladly do that after your education is finished. And I would probably advise everybody to do that. Because like I said, you're going to be in conversations, contracts, situations with people that are highly educated, and they're going to know the land, where the landmines are, and kind of you have to be prepared like they are. And, like I said, education really, really helps. And as far as, how to be an artist, creatively speaking, I should say, I think everybody has to be an authentic version of themselves. If you idolize other people, that's great. If you take pieces of their music and make it your own, that's great. I do that. Imitation, kind of, so to speak. But man, be yourself, because at the end of the day, people are going to buy you. They're not going to buy a version of you that somebody else created, a label or, management. These people can try to push and form and mold a person that is not you. And eventually you're going to sell a product that you don't even believe in. And that is the worst. That is a worst case scenario. To sing songs, to be an artist that you don't even connect with is a slavery. It's just kind of, you're in a prison of being a guy that you don't know, and you have to be that guy every day. It's just a miserable existence.
Wow. Yeah. Great. So I don't know if you ever watched the Brady Bunch. Reminds me of that Brady Bunch episode with Greg Brady. You just fit the suit. Like, you know what I mean? That's it. That's what they were after. So really good stuff there. And what do you got? I know you're finishing the tour somewhere around December and stuff. What's coming up next for you? You're working on another album, more songs. What's coming up next? What kind of goals you have right now for the future? Well,
right now we're like you said, we're kind of neck deep in this new single we have, Good Day for Living, which is doing incredible. So grateful for the success we're having with that song. I haven't been in the top 40 for 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years. So I'm like, we got a top 40 and it's moving to 30 and it's trucking. It's a really great feeling to have relevance on radio again after a couple of year absence. So that's what we're all high fiving and just hugging each other and having a good time with that. And I'll tell you this. Even though we've had hits before, big hits, several number one songs and sold a lot of records, there's no greater feeling musically than having success with what you're doing right now. Doesn't matter what you've done, but having the success with what you're doing right now is the pinnacle. So that feels really good. And we'll start the creative process for the next album probably in early part of next year. And that's a long 1.5 to 2 year process. So no new music for a little while now.
Very cool. And last thing I want to hit you with here, Joe, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Well, for a father about to be father, I would say sleep, and let your wife sleep. You guys get as much sleep as possible, because it's going to be different from now on. As far as dads out there with little kids, or even, older kids, like I was saying earlier, be patient. My goodness, be patient. Because that's something that rubs off on them. If you're an impatient man or woman, you will raise impatient children, and like I said, I have to learn that every day. I have to stop myself every day and say, slow it down, be understanding, listen a little more than talk. They'll believe a little more what you say too, if you say a little less and a little less emotion in it.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. It's been a lot of fun for me. I got to say, Joe Nichols, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
I really appreciate you, man. Thank you for saying that.
You have been listening to First Class Fatherhood. First Class Fatherhood is a family-made media podcast. Please visit www.firstclassfatherhood.com or www.familymade.com to find out more details. You can order First Class Fatherhood advice and wisdom from high-profile dads on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Proverbs 22:6 tells us, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will never depart from it. God bless, and I'll catch you next time.